What's up, peeps? This is Todd, and welcome back to my show. Today, I wanted to talk about the case for a more humane healthcare system. If that sounds good, let's hop into the video. So before anybody freaks out and calls me a socialist, remember, I sold health insurance for 5 years. And I made a fortune doing it as a middleman. Because I have seen that money can be made hand over fist by selling health insurance, I've had success, but I also see what a racket it can be. So no, I am not a socialist. Capitalism is how I became wealthy, and specifically, selling health insurance is how I was able to get rich and buy 6 houses. But I definitely think a case could be made for a more humane healthcare system where maybe everyone gets sort of a base bronze level plan, and then if you want to buy up, of course you're able to do that if you choose to. So hear me out on this real quick. So if everyone in the United States had a basic bronze level health insurance plan that was paid for by the government, and yes, I understand that means paid for by taxes. I'm well aware of that. I don't think that anything comes for free. But if everyone had access to healthcare just on a base level, like literally everybody had it, well, that means that more people would have access to medical treatment and less people would be sick or dying of disease. In a situation like we're in now, where there's this coronavirus pandemic, if you look at the, I think, 180,000 deaths or so, a lot of those folks had pre-existing conditions. A lot of them are in poor areas that don't have access to good healthcare or good insurance. And they either died directly from the coronavirus or the coronavirus amplified whatever other disease was making them sick. Now, think of how much money the United States in particular has lost because we've shut down. We shut down restaurants and bars and movie theaters. We can't have social gatherings. We pretty much can't do anything because there's this fear of the disease spreading. And I think a case could be made that if more people had access to healthcare and access to health insurance, then less people would be getting the virus and certainly less people would be dying from it. Now, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional of any kind, and I don't claim to be one. But when I look at not only the money that was lost because of lost revenue, and also the money that the government shelled out in stimulus packages, I can't help but wonder if you'd actually be saving money if everyone in the country had access to even just a bronze level cheap plan where they at least got a doctor checkup every single year and they had access to pharmacies and medication. Now, certainly as it stands, health insurance is more expensive than it should be. And again, I only know this because I've worked in the industry my entire career. I once had a client where they had a son who had diabetes. And not the type of diabetes you get from like eating bad food, but the type that you're born with. This kid had a prescription for insulin, and the co-payment for his insulin was $50 every single month. But that insurance carrier, which will remain nameless because I don't want to get in trouble putting this video out, that insurance carrier went through a tier change, which means that the prescription that this child had was in maybe like a tier 3 and it moved to a tier 4. Same exact medication, same prescription, but it changed tiers. And that meant for this family, their co-payment went from $50 to $400 per month. Now the problem is this particular individual, this particular child, he was allergic to the other types of insulin that were cheaper. He had to have that specific medication or he would die. And this family was a low-income family. So $400 a month to this family was a huge burn in their wallet. It was almost impossible for them to come up with. I was on the phone talking to this sobbing mother about how she doesn't know how she's going to afford medication for her son, but if her son doesn't get it, he's going to die. It's very easy for rich people to sit back and say, oh, well, maybe they should work harder. Maybe she should get a second shift at the diner. Maybe the husband should drive for Uber, whatever it is to make more money. And I get it. There are ways to increase income. Like there certainly are ways. But I also think we're too good of a country to let people suffer, and especially if they need medication that used to be affordable and now it's not. What had happened is now we have this family, we have this son who has diabetes, who needs insulin to survive, and now it's unaffordable for this family. And I think that if there was just a more humane healthcare system to where that kid got his insulin, I mean, think about it this way, like, someone who is diabetic and who needs medication and who is already sick has a much greater chance of dying from something like the coronavirus. And when you have 180,000 deaths that are COVID related, that freaks everybody out and everything is shut down. So what if instead that kid and others like him had the medical treatment they needed and had the prescriptions that were life-saving. And so they weren't dying when some pandemic enhanced a disease, meaning no one's freaking out about it, meaning the economy doesn't have to shut down. I just think, like, if you pay some money up front, but you're saving all this money in stimulus and government bailouts and this lost production from businesses shutting down, I think you actually come out ahead. Now, another example I have on the complete opposite end of the spectrum is I had a wealthy client, and him and his wife were skiing on a very luxurious mountaintop. Anyway, at one point during their ski trip, the man sort of collapses. Like, the husband, I don't know if he has a heart attack or what, but he's on the ground, he's not moving, he's still breathing, but it's not looking good. Now, luckily, this, wealthy individual, I don't know if it was a cell phone or a satellite phone or whatever, but they were able to call for help. And they actually had to have a company similar to Air Ambulance, where it's essentially an ambulance, but on a chopper, because they were on the top of this remote mountain. This was not some sort of like government ambulance or anything. This was a private company. It was the only one that could get to him in a timely fashion to get him up in the air and to a hospital. Now, here's the kicker. It's a damn good thing that my clients were wealthy, because before they even let him get on the chopper, they required a deposit via credit card of $25,000. I'm going to say that again for the people in the back. Before this dying man on this mountainside, before he was allowed to get on the chopper, they asked his wife for a credit card where they had put a deposit down of $25,000. Now, again, my client was wealthy. They were able to do that, no problem. But what if he was poor? If he was poor, he would have died right then on that mountainside. And I think about this a lot, because if that happened to me, we have a credit card that we could put $25,000 on, and that's great. But most people don't have that. And I worry, is this what we've come to now, is your life is worth saving as long as you're rich enough to pay the bill? Like, is that where we're at? Is that, you're allowed to live if you're rich, and if you're poor, well, too bad, you should have worked harder and now you're going to die. And again, I am not a socialist. I am a capitalist. I believe in capitalism. I believe it is the very best system. I truly do believe that. I do think that with capitalism, you have to have some sort of safety net. And I think the ones that we have in place now could use a refresher. They could use something a little bit better. And the reason why capitalism needs a safety net is because by nature, capitalism creates competition, and competition creates inequality. So you will always have people at the bottom. And I think we are way too good of a country to let the poor people suffer and die. Like, I think we are too good of a country to do that. Now, I worked as a middleman in the insurance brokerage space, and people that are really good at, doing what I did can make millions, if not tens of millions of dollars, basically being a middleman for insurance. And so, needless to say, there's a lot of money in healthcare. There's a boatload of money in health insurance. And if that was somehow shifted to make sure that everybody in the country gets some bronze level plan, I think we'd have less people suffering and dying. And that means that when a pandemic comes, less people are affected. We don't have to shut the country down. There's no need for big stimulus payments. And I actually think we would come out ahead if we had a more humane system. I understand that nothing is for free. Anytime the government says free, it's all taxpayer money. But I wonder how much money the taxpayers lost because they weren't able to produce because their business was shut down. And I know personally, if I owned a restaurant and maybe I had to pay 3% more in taxes, to make sure that everybody around me had health insurance, but it meant that in a pandemic, I didn't have to shut my business down because less people were getting sick and dying, I think that would be a good trade-off for me. But again, hey, I'm not here to change anyone's mind. I'm just here to open a dialogue. I'd love to know what you guys think of a more humane healthcare system in the comments. So feel free to comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.